Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and I wanted to take a second to talk about something that I just saw in the media. And I want to give you a perspective that I hope that you'll consider. I know some people may not want to hear everything I have to say, but I got to say it because it's the right thing to do. Um, President Obama, is about to sign off on some pardons and commutations. For the estimates are roughly 80, no more than 100 people from the media reports that I've seen so far. And the president's getting credit, deservedly so, for doing issuing more pardons than most presidents, if not all presidents in American history, if he follows through on what he says that he's going to do. I mean, for the last 8 years, he hasn't done a lot, but it seems like he's going to do a few as he leaves office, which I think is absolutely fine for those who are lucky enough to make the list. But I want to give you a perspective that I hope that you'll think about, because I know people. There are people that really support the president 100%, no matter what he does. There are people who love the president to the point where it's an emotional reaction. I talked to a woman yesterday who said, I just love Obama. I just love Obama. And I said, well, what do you love about him? And she really couldn't name exactly why she loved him. She just said, I love him. And so to me, I think it's a very dangerous place to go when you fall in love with a politician, white, black, male, female, or otherwise. When you fall in love with a politician, politicians are not really wired to love you back. They're wired, and their systems are designed to exploit that love, because they know that you're going to pretty much trust them and give them the benefit of the doubt on anything that they do. And I don't think that's the effective way for black people to engage in the political discourse. We have to be very objective. It's like a car salesman. If you fall in love with a car salesman or fall in love with a car, then they're automatically going to jack up the price because they see you as the sucker who's going to pay more than other people would be willing to pay. So here's what I want you to think about when it comes to this commutation issue. Let's say the president goes through it and he pardons 80, let's say 100 people. The list has about 30,000 people on it from the estimates that I've seen. So you're talking about 80 to 100 people out of 30,000. Let's see, 30,000. What's 1% of 30,000? It's about 300. So you're talking about less than one third of 1% of the people who should be considered for release will actually get to go home. That's not meaningful change. That's certainly not hope or change, because 29,900 people, human beings, living, breathing human beings with hearts in their bodies, with families at home, will not get to come home. So when we look at when we celebrate the 80 to 100 that get to come home, we have to make sure we're not falling in what I call the Hunger Games trap. The Hunger Games trap is this, and if you see the movie Hunger Games and you analyze it, you'll see it's a deep reflection of what happens in our society. In the Hunger Games, basically, the whole idea is you pick a couple of people out of thousands, and you treat those people really well, and you oppress everyone else, and you treat those two people like they are like they are heroes. You hold them up as beacons of hope. And effectively, what you're doing is you're feeding the masses hope in order to keep them calm, in order to keep them from complaining, because they're all looking at this hope and they're saying, "Ooh, that could be me." When the fact is that the odds are squarely against them. You're leaning on their emotion to keep them from making logical analyses or logical determinations based on the situation that they're actually in. So the thing about feeding hope that's easy is hope. I can give you hope, and it doesn't cost me a thing. If I can spend my whole life getting you to hope that things will happen, will get better, then that's all I need to give you. I don't need to actually do anything meaningful to really change your life. I'm just giving you an emotional reaction. Let me say this, and then I'll be done. I went to visit a brother in prison not too long ago by the name of Mario Lloyd. Mario Lloyd sold some drugs. He admits it. He sold a lot back in the 1980s, back when Dougie Fresh was a teenager. Mario, as a teenager himself, as a young man in his early to mid 20s, made a lot of mistakes, did a lot of things wrong, sold a lot of cocaine. But he didn't. He's not in prison for any kind of violent crime. He it was a first time offender. They gave him 15 life sentences. I don't know how you can die 15 times, but I guess that's the way the courts are. They incarcerated him. They incarcerated his mother. They incarcerated his sister. So they pretty much obliterated an entire family. As a result, you had children in multiple generations. Now Mario spent the last almost 30 years in prison. He's a grandfather now. His son was murdered on the very same block where his father, where he used to sell drugs back when he was a young man. He believes that if he'd been out, is able to be a better father to his son wouldn't have gotten killed. He would have guided him away from that lifestyle. He tried to do it from prison, but it was very difficult. So what we have to understand is that there are thousands of cases like this where people were incarcerated for nonviolent offenses that related to drugs and received sentences that were absolutely positively draconian, worse than any Holocaust that you can imagine, including the one that happened in Nazi Germany during World War II. They absolutely destroyed not just the futures of individuals who were incarcerated, but also the little children that they left behind at home. And they did things in such a way that it does not make our society better. It only makes our society worse. All the little kids you see out here wilding, running around, shooting, and doing all kinds of stuff that you don't understand, a lot of it's because their parents have been infected by the criminal justice system. So we have to really look at the big picture here. I know that 80 to 100 is progress, but remember what Malcolm said, that making progress from an absolutely devastating experience is not the same as equality. He said, if I put my knife in your back 7 inches and I pull it out 2 inches, you can't tell me that you've made progress and let that be it. You need to pull the knife all the way out of my back. You need to heal the wound. You need to apologize for what you did, etc., etc., and maybe even compensate me for the damage that you did to my body. That's what true equality is. That's what meaningful progress is. Pulling the 7 inch knife in your back out 2 inches is nothing. And so, if you look at this situation, what we're seeing is a scenario where, when you got 30,000 people who should be considered for sentence commutation, not that they're innocent people, not that they're just wonderful people, not that they didn't do anything wrong, not that they shouldn't have done time in prison, but a person that has a minor possession of drugs does not need to be in prison for 60 years. That's absolutely sick. They shouldn't go to prison for life for the things that college students do on campuses every single weekend. And so what I'm really seeing, honestly, when I look at all this, is I kind of see a publicity stunt. I just see something where it's not really meaningful change. It's not really going to be the right thing. It's not really going to make a dent in the extensive damage that's been done. It's almost like destroying your house with a tornado, and then I show up with a duster and I dust off the ashes a little bit and say, "See, I cleaned up your house. Your house is fine." It's not. It's just not the same thing. So here's the final conclusion. I'm gonna leave you with this, and you can feel free to debate it. And if you want to get mad at me for allegedly attacking the president, then you can do that. I know that's what people do if they've been trained to just sign off on what any politician does. I can't, but in good conscience, I can't support this. I can't sit here and favor the success and happiness of one man over the 30,000 people who've been affected and the 100,000 or so people who are related to those who are affected. Remember, when these men and women went away to prison, they left families behind. They left children behind. So I'm not going to put the success of one human being over 100,000 people. And I hope you'll agree with me on that. If you don't, I don't really know what to say. But here's a simple idea, and it's funny that common sense just doesn't seem to exist anymore in politics. Look, here's the thing. The standard for commutation that they're referring to when they talk to the public is: number one, your offense had to be nonviolent. Number two, you had to have exhibited good behavior while you were in prison. Number three, you have to have gotten a sentence that would have been much shorter had you been sentenced today in 2015. Those are three simple standards. You can apply those standards across the board to 10, 20, 30,000 people. If you meet the standard, you should go home. If you don't meet the standard, then maybe they have to consider something else for you. But it shouldn't be a lottery. It shouldn't be a flip of the coin, roll the dice, like you lucky enough to know somebody who knows the president, and then you might be lucky enough to get a chance to get this opportunity that should be made available to thousands of people. I mean, if you have one standard, there should be one standard. You shouldn't just say, well, the standard is only going to be used for these 80 people. No, screw the other 29,900. Screw the 100,000 or so people that they left behind in their families. Forget about them. We're going to get these nice little 80 to 100 people that will make a nice publicity stunt that are good for our PR and make us look good, make us feel good about ourselves, allow us to walk around and say, look at what progress we've made. And then the other people will just languish to die. When I sat with Mario Lloyd and I visited him at his facility, it took me a long time to get into the federal penitentiary, just so you know, because the prison torture torture is so bad. The way they treat the inmates and their families is so bad that they didn't want somebody like me in there because the things that I say might empower them and help them better understand their situation. Talking about the inmates, because when I was there, I didn't see inmates. I saw my brothers. I felt like I was in an HBCU. I felt like I was in the place that society wanted me to be, and that I was only fortunate enough to avoid. But then the other reason they didn't want me in there is because they were afraid I'd see something in terms of how the things that happened to them, the kinds of racist things, the racist abuse, the emasculation, and other forms of torture that they're forced to endure. But I finally got a chance to go in there, and I sat there with them for about 6 hours, and I talked to this man. This man is a grandfather. He's been in prison for almost 30 years. He committed his crimes when he was in his 20s. He has no interest in going back to that life. When people talk to him about it, he says, "I don't. I have no interest in that." He regrets what he did. He is sorry. He knows that he was young and stupid. He wants to see his grandbabies before he gets old, and that's all this man wants. But yet somehow we're still punishing him for things that he did back in the 1980s, back when Dougie Fresh was a teenager, when Michael Jackson was a young artist. That back when Ronald Reagan was in office. I mean, it was so long ago. So I just really think that we have to have some common sense on these incarceration issues. When Russell Simmons and I got together and we wrote that letter to the Justice Department a couple years ago, um, we were fortunate enough to get a lot of great celebrities to sign on to the letter, from Will Smith to Brad Pitt, all the way across the board. We had about 100 people. And it was amazing to me how, Russell is more diplomatic than me. Russell, everybody, just so you know, even though Russell, I know he's had his PR issues, but Russell is one of those people, on a personal basis, where everybody I talk to seems to like him because he's very diplomatic. He's very um, um, when he speaks to you, even if he criticizes you, he doesn't do it in a nasty way. But despite all that, we got so much pushback. We had so many people that were just mad about the fact that we were trying to just ask the president to do the right thing. Pick up your pen and just sign some pieces of paper to change people's lives. Okay, you might have to sign a couple thousand, 5,000, 10,000 sheets of paper, but I mean, you're talking about every time you sign your name, you're saving a human life. You're allowing some little crying 3-year-old girl to see her daddy again. You're allowing a family to move on and heal. You're correcting an injustice that we all have agreed is wrong. So I don't see why I'm the crazy one for just saying the obvious. You don't have to have a PhD or be a rocket scientist to know this. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. So if you expect to see me jump up and down over all the announcements or the commutations, I'm just not going to be that guy because I'm not looking at the 80 to 100 people who got out. I'm looking at the 29,900 people who don't feel an ounce of hope, who put their names on that commutation list because they've had good behavior, because they were nonviolent offenders, maybe first time offenders, and they were really young when they committed their crimes, been in prison for almost 30 years. I'm thinking about those people and why. And every night when we go to bed, they're in this same prison cell, this same little box that they've been forced to live in since the 1980s and the early 1990s, and we all just know that that's wrong. It doesn't mean that every criminal is innocent. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be punished when you break the law. We know that, and we let's not get into all of that. It just means that the punishment must fit the crime. That's the point. It's the nuance that matters, not the dichotomy. Don't get into saying like, "Oh, well, you're helping criminals." Well, you know what? Pretty much 98% of our society could be labeled criminal if they want, if we change the laws enough. If we decided that you should get 100 years in prison for drinking, underage drinking on a college campus, look at how many white males would be going to prison overnight. If we decided that you should get 100 years in prison for using drugs on a college campus or some sort of domestic violence on the college campus, there would be tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of white males going to prison. So don't get into this whole, oh, they're felons and they're not. These labels are used to divide us, to make us think that these individuals are not human, that they deserve whatever they get, that if you go to prison and you get raped for 20 years, that you deserve it, because if you didn't want to get raped, you shouldn't have stole a can of beans. That's ridiculous. That's crazy. It's insane. It's nonsense. We have to fight for common sense on this issue. So I encourage you to think about it. Tell me what you think. Even if you don't agree with me, I'm not going to get mad at you about it. But I'm just going to tell you, there's not a night I go to bed when I'm not thinking about those individuals who are locked away for things that they did 20, 30 years ago. I can't imagine doing something stupid at the age of 18 and still suffering from that decision at the age of 50. Maybe if it's murder, you can kind of maybe understand that, but um, if it's just assault or if it's just a drug related offense, even assault. I mean, assault. We know assaults can be very bad, but even if it's just I sold some cocaine because my mama needed some money, and I did that at the age of 18, and I regret it. Should you really be in prison 30 years later? If your answer is yes, then I guess we're not seeing eye to eye. But if your answer is no, I encourage you to fight and I encourage you to engage in critical thinking. I didn't mean to be long winded on this. I appreciate you listening. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World. Please take care. God bless. I'm gone. Peace.